The Really Big Lie is a futuristic fairy tale told on the Apple iPad about an astronaut named Eve who was deported to an alien planet and who wants to find her way back home. The reader helps Eve explore the planet and get the advice of the animals who live in it. The reader can move Eve across the landscape by tilting the iPad in different directions or by dragging her in the direction they want to travel in. The organization of the story is based on the tradition of folktales and fables, emphasizing cyclical plot elements. As in many folktales, the animals ask Eve to give them something in exchange for advice about how to return home. What the animals want is to hear Eve's story about how she got there. Each time Eve retells the story, she hopes that it will convince the animals she's speaking with to help her out, but each time it fails because they only tell her where to go next. The animals' words literally act as a guide for Eve, leading the player across the digital space using a pathfinding algorithm. Every time Eve retells her story, the story is different. Eventually, the reader finds out that Eve was banished from her home for telling a lie, or, as the euphemistic expression goes, for telling tales. The Really Big Lie is my own version of what Scott McCloud refers to as an infinite canvas, an ever-expandable, seamless space for storytelling that could only be realized in digital form. The software was written in Flash and translated to the iPad using Adobe's development tools for Apple's mobile operating systems. Rather than using one of the many game development libraries available for Flash, I wrote my own software to create this infinite canvas. So this piece is not only a story, but a system for storytelling on a 2D landscape. The most important aspect of the software is a system for loading and unloading visual assets through a set of grids. Boxes inside the grids are smoothly added and subtracted from memory as the reader moves across the landscape. When one of the boxes is loaded onto the display list, it finds out which items should be placed inside it and loads them at the correct coordinates. These elements are unloaded when the box moves outside the screen so that they don't burden the iPad's GPU. This allowed me to create a 2D landscape over 2,000 times the size of the iPad screen without slowing down the program. The grids are layered on top of one another with different contents to create a parallax scrolling effect where elements in the foreground move faster than the elements in the background. The second part of this software is a system that controls the flow of the story. This includes a system for tracking where the reader is in the dialogue and for feeding dialogue into the right characters at the appropriate time. The system is flexible and can be applied to any dialogue and any set of characters, so this code can be reused to tell a completely different story by changing visual assets and using your own writing. The Really Big Lie is a tale about how telling stories can get us into and out of trouble, about how words can be constructive or destructive, helpful or dangerous. The words of the animals Eve encounters sometimes function as a guide and sometimes take her in the wrong direction. It isn't really clear whether Eve's own story is true or false, whether she's to blame or whether she's a victim, and whether her storytelling instincts are helping her or keeping her from her goal. This ambiguity reflects the deeply problematic nature of our human impulse to create fiction and to tell each other stories. Our words can lead us astray even as they help us find our way.